Welcome to the study. This is Brofessor Hemlock. Today I want to go over which covenant should you be selecting. Now I wanted to make this video because I have played all four covenants for quite some time, and I have swapped between covenants a ridiculous amount of time. And it's a question I get fairly often on what covenant selection should I make for X situation. And this is something that I kind of find that deserves a little bit more of an explanation, because all covenants are viable right now. You may want to pick something that's different than the most picked covenant in a certain situation, because your playstyle is going to match better with that covenant and at your level of gameplay. And I think that is what makes the largest difference. If you're, where are you at in the game and what content do you enjoy? And that's going to make your covenant selection change depending on how you like to play with your specific setup, or are you pugging? So let's kind of dive on in here. And I want to start with Curian. So everyone knows I love Curian. If you've watched any videos on the channel, you know I'm a big fan of Curian. Now, I don't want to be too biased when I'm talking about Curian, but let's kind of dive into the reasons you would want to pick Curian. So first off, in Mythic Raid content right now, Curian is the top performing covenant. Out of the top 10 players in Mythic Raid content, Curian is 5 of those top 10, with Necrolord coming in at second, having 3, and Night Fae having 1. Ventir does not have a top 10 player on it any longer. When you look at specific boss fights, Curian is either the number 1 parse on every boss fight, or holds a top 5 slash top 3 slash many top 5 parses out of all those boss fights. So Curian is a clear pick right now for what is going to probably be, on average, the best covenant for Mythic Raid. Of course, certain covenants do perform better in certain situations, but right now I think it's pretty clear that we can say Curian performs the best overall in Mythic Raid. When it comes to Mythic Plus, Curian actually is not the number 1 performing covenant. It's actually very evenly split when you're looking at the top 10 for Mythic Plus content. So that was entirely up in the air. However, I do think Curian has the greatest DPS profile for Mythic Plus content, but that does depend on your group composition. So now, playstyle. So the Curian playstyle has one major benefit over every other covenant. That playstyle is the short, easy to pull off burst window. So what I'm talking about here is how you actually maximize DPS as Curian. You only have to get to 18 harmony stacks, and that can be done over the course of any amount of time you need. You don't have to worry about mobility ruining your build time. You don't have to worry about any of that. You don't have to worry about the randomness of clear cast procs. It's just get to 18 stacks. Now, the burst window for Curian is a massive 10 seconds long, Radiant Spark, Touch of the Magi, and then 5 blasts with the barrage at the end. And that is one of the strongest benefits to Curian, is you only need 10 seconds to do a major burst window. And that is, in my opinion, the strongest reason to pick Curian. There's just not any setup time needed. It's very straightforward. It's, I'm going to do this big Mythic Plus pull. I've got my primary target. Boom, pop it and go. You don't have to worry about too many clear cast procs. There's no randomness involved. And even in Mythic Raid, as it's kind of been shown why Curian is so strong, that 10-second burst window is very consistent, and only in a few situations is it actually punishing for random movement mechanics. And even then, you can still pull off the DPS window using Presence of Mind, so you're not too limited on performance. Now, moving on to Night Fae here. Night Fae is probably my personal second favorite covenant. Why I like Night Fae is just how strong it feels in pickup groups. So if you're someone you pug a lot of Mythic Plus and you don't do that much Mythic raiding, and maybe you want a PvP on the side, Night Fae's probably going to be your covenant selection. Night Fae has a very strong AoE profile for Mythic Plus, and I mean very strong, like very, very strong. It has a great utility with Double Orb, Touch of the Magi window is less punishing, and you're going to have very quick APs with the CDR from Night Fae's ability. If you're someone that likes to PvP on the side as well, Night Fae is substantially above every other Covenant for PvP. The mobility offered from its special ability is just, you can't compete with it. It is very, 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 very strong, and it's great in PvP content. And of course, the CDR is amazing in PvP content as well. So if you're like pugging a lot of Mythic Plus content, or if you're someone that's in a pre-made group that has a really strong single target partners in your Mythic Plus group, Night Fae excels. It just excels at AoE pressure. So if you have someone that is, like an Affliction Warlock, I think of as a partner, they do insanely strong single target pressure as an Affliction Warlock, but the AoE is kind of lackluster. And that is where Night Fae can massively fill the gap in your Mythic Plus team's composition. Night Fae is something that is fun to play too. I think that's one of the cool parts of it. You get to see really good burst numbers on AoE pulls, and the rotation feels really smooth. And there's not much complications with it, I would say. The big downside with Night Fae is that when you get into the raiding environment, the rotation does get a lot more complex because there's a lot of different ways to use Shifting Power, along with the Arcane Prodigy conduit, when to use AP, when not to, maximizing your windows of burst. Now, one of the other downsides to Night Fae is going to be that you will need multiple legendary effects, where Kyrian only needs one legendary effect. You will need multiple legendary effects. Bombardment is typically ran in Mythic Plus, and then depending on the fight specifically, you will want a different legendary in raiding content. Overall, this Covenant is an amazing selection if you pug Mythic Plus content or are interested in pushing PvP content. Moving on to Ventir. Now, Ventir, their strong point for Ventir is by far and above how simple it is to play Ventir. I really think this is like, if you're introducing yourself to Arcane and you're coming from like Frost, or if you're someone who doesn't want to hard lock in to playing Arcane so much, Ventir is probably going to be your best option. The rotation is very straightforward. It offers a lot of flexibility, and it just feels nice. Your rotation is easy to hit. There's not much complications with it. And you can kind of be flexible with your use on Arcane Power. Oddly enough, Ventir is actually the Mythic Plus #1 player as Arcane in the world right now. Crazy, never would have guessed it. Ventir is #1 as far as Covenants go in Mythic Plus. Now, mind you, it's just one person, but that does prove that Ventir can be powerful in Mythic Plus content. Now, with that ease of rotation of Ventir, it is also pretty friendly on other things. So in PvP, it's not terrible. You have a kick reduction, so whenever you get silenced, you're going to be silenced for a shorter duration. The Nausea Soulbind has a great haste buff, and of course you can play Frost as an off-spec. So if you like to play multiple specs, if you like a simplicity and a rotation, and Ventir is still viable in all forms of content. So I think Ventir is just a great neutral pick. It is strong in all forms of content, it's got great off-spec ability, and it just feels simple to play, which is kind of nice. There's nothing wrong with picking something that's easier to play. And that would be great reasons to select the Ventir Covenant. And on to our last Covenant here, Necrolord. So, I do really enjoy Necrolord. I think the Deathborn ability is probably the coolest out of every single other Covenant-specific ability. Deathborn has a massive 3-minute cooldown. It feels insanely powerful. And one of the big things coming up with Necrolord is that legendary effect is going to be probably really, really powerful. It looks really powerful, and it's really cool because it makes the 3-minute CD not feel as bad because you can get random Deathborn procs. And in addition to that, they are making a more Mythic Plus viable option for Soulbinds. And that, I think, is going to be where Necrolord is going to have the potential to be the best Covenant. The legendary effect, the Mythic Plus Soulbind benefits, the Mastery proc for those who didn't watch the 9.1 video. They're going to get a big Mastery proc when you're hitting new targets. So every pull, you're going to start off with a ton of Mastery. And then, of course, the legendary effect, which is going to make your damage profile just escalate very rapidly for multiple target Arcane Blast hitting during Deathborn. So that is one of the really cool parts about Necrolord, and probably my favorite aspect of it. No Covenant feels better than Necrolord when you press Arcane Power. That's it. It's as simple as that. You press Deathborn, you go into Arcane Power, you are seeing the farthest numbers on your screen. It is just, it's beautiful. It's beautiful to see. You are hitting Arcane Blasts, in a huge number. It is a very large touch of the Magi Explosion, and obviously it's a 3-minute cooldown window, so it is limited to that 3-minute window, mind you, but no other Covenant has that kind of power during their Arcane Power window. And that's probably one of the coolest aspects of Necrolord. In addition to that, they do have some different PvP viability, where Night Fae may be the strongest PvP Covenant, Ventir and Necrolord kind of share that second spot. Fleshcraft, after receiving a buff, is nutty in PvP. It feels really good. I was able to play Necrolord at an over 1800 CR, so it is viable, and it does compete really well. That Fleshcraft does make you feel like you have an insane amount of survivability when you're unable to escape your targets. I would probably suggest Necrolord for someone that is looking forward to 9.1 for one. 9.1, I mean, even I might be going Necrolord for 9.1. It's looking amazing. It is strong viability across all Covenants, and if you're someone who loves to see insane Arcane Power windows, if you love that funnel your burst damage into one major cooldown style of play, Necrolord excels at that, and it feels unbelievably good when you pop your lovely Deathborn into an AP, and it's uncomparable. I think it's, if Boomkin Convoke was turned into an Arcane Mage, but was actually interactive and fun, that's what Necrolord is. It has that fun, powerful, and strong viability still across the board as far as all forms of content goes. Now, that is kind of my overview of all Covenant options for Arcane. If you have some thoughts on what makes your Covenant selection the most favorite, please feel free to comment down below. If you have any questions about specific Covenants or playstyles, I welcome them as well. Let me know. I'm here to help. Thank you for watching. Everyone have a great day.